Hey there everybody, this is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I am continuing my troubleshooting series videos, and if you'll remember, the first one talked a lot about thread tension. And thread tension is a very common reason why your vintage sewing machine might not be performing the way it should. And just as a reminder, again, you as the operator are the brains of the machine. Unlike new machines, the vintage models don't have computers in them. They don't have software. They don't have little micro brains. And that's actually a good thing, because we know long term these brainless machines, they're all brawn and not a lot of brains, but they rely on the brains of the operator. And I think long term they may actually outlast any of those modern computerized machines. Maybe not, but these machines have obviously stood the test of time. Now, one thing I wanted to show you, and then we'll move on. I had mentioned to you thread tension. This is another thing that you want to look for when it comes to thread, okay? Not so much a tension issue, but remember, I mentioned in the last video that if you miss even one thread guide, it can really cause an issue. I'm pointing, and it would be helpful if you guys could see what I'm pointing at. There we go. If you miss one thread guide or one turn, or you put the thread in its path and it's not the way it was designed, you will have problems, and the machine will not sew properly, it won't form a good stitch, and the machine will patiently wait for you or someone to figure out that it needs its settings adjusted. Once that happens, then the machine should be ready to go. Remember, it was engineered to sew with a specific way of being set up. It's not overly complex. In fact, the thread paths of the old machines, for the most part, are fairly simple for most of them. So one thing that can happen to you, and it may have happened to some of you who are experienced sewers, I'm going to zoom in here on the needle area. And I'm gonna look through the camera to make sure that I am getting a good shot of this. So you see, let's put the foot down. Maybe you can see it better. Okay, so you can see I have a thread here. It's a dark colored thread, and it's coming from the left side toward the right. It's threaded properly. Sometimes, particularly when you have a new spool of thread, there may be a lot of twist in that thread, and the thread may come off of your thread spool fairly taut, or with high tension and twist. If that happens, sometimes when you are running your thread through the machine, the thread will actually loop. It'll curl around the needle. Let's see if we can get in even closer. I'll try to get this to focus for you guys. But as you can see, the thread will actually twirl around the needle, and even though you have it threaded properly through the eye, it actually will it will sometimes curl on itself, and it'll actually come back around the needle, and that can create problems. So again, you want to have, particularly when you're getting your thread, let's say you're rethreading the machine. Remember, it's when you are getting ready to put new thread up top. Let's say that, let's zoom back out here. Let's say that you're getting ready to put thread back up on the top of the machine. You've run out on your thread spool up top, and you have to rethread, or you're inserting a new needle, or you've run out of bobbin thread and you need to take the bobbin out and wind it. Again, those are the times I have noticed when people are most likely to notice there's something not right, because they've gone in and they've had to reset the machine and they've missed something. That's usually, if you're going to have a hiccup that is related to troubleshooting, it often appears during those moments. Now, I had mentioned to you guys yesterday about thread tension, and I've already done a video on bobbins. One thing to mention to you also, and I'm going to show a bobbin spinning over here on the bobbin winder, and I'll show you, this is something I mentioned in bobbins, and I want to demonstrate it for you so you can actually see what I was describing when I was talking to you about the potential of a damaged bobbin causing a problem. So let's say, okay, you've got your top thread, it's good to go, you've got your path right, you've come through the needle properly, you've got your upper thread tail, and down here you have the bottom thread tail, and it's, when I say tail, I mean like the tails of a kite, right? And it's just hanging out there, and you can pull on those tails, and you know that your tension should be set about right, and you're good to go. But you have run out of bobbin thread, and you need to get your bobbin rewound. It has gone empty. This is a class 15 bobbin, and you'll remember this holds more thread than any of those. So one thing to mention, let's get over here and we'll zoom in a bit on the bobbin winder, because I want you to see fairly close up what I'm doing here and what's going to hopefully get revealed to us. I want the camera to be flat on, so I'm going to be doing this sideways for you guys. I want you to see this. So one of the things that people don't always think about is when you wind thread on a bobbin, you want to have the machine spinning at about maybe a medium speed. You don't have to do it super slow, but don't floor it because you're in a hurry, and wind this bobbin as at warp speed, because if you do, that can add an over amount of tension to your bobbin, and then the thread itself is wound really tight, and that can influence whether you have a happy machine or not. So I know that all of this sounds like a lot, but once you get used to using a machine, it's all going to be second nature. You won't even think about it. You'll just do it. So remember, troubleshooting with the bobbin. And I was describing to you in the bobbin video how to check for this, but I'm going to demonstrate it. So I'm going to come over here to my hand wheel. Okay, I'm going to turn toward me the clutch knob just enough to loosen it. Okay, and now if I wiggle the hand wheel, the needle is not moving, but I'm moving the hand wheel. So let's see, let's get this sort of facing you straight on. There we go. Should be in focus, I believe. Make sure we've got our automatic focus on here. Okay, so I'm going to put the bobbin onto the bobbin winder. And of course, there's a notch in the bobbin. For those of you who are new, there's a little notch that will help you line it up. Boop, and then you find the notch because you hear it go click. Now, I'm going to press down, and that's going to engage the bobbin tire on the hand wheel, and I'm going to start spinning it. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm going to slow it down, but there's a slight wiggle, okay? And if I go faster, so this is, let's see, this is slow. This is full speed. Now let's slow it down to sort of, I'm guesstimating here, sort of a medium. There you go, a medium speed, guys. Wind your bobbin, it won't take long, but don't floor it. Don't hit the pedal to the floor when you're winding a bobbin, because that can affect your tension. But while we're here and you're watching the bobbin winder move, look at the bobbin and let's see. I'm going to zoom in more. I really want to see if this will pick up for you all. Now, I'm going to, when I play the video back, I'll be able to tell, but let's see. I don't know if you can see this, but the bobbin is moving pretty in alignment. There's a little wiggle on it, and it's a little more obvious to me from the side, but overall, I think that's fine. I think you could use that bobbin without any problems. If you have a lot of warp in the bobbin, you'll see it because it'll appear to wiggle back and forth, or wobble, I should say, when you are facing it head on. And again, that's kind of a nice way for you to kind of look at your bobbins and see if they are straight or they're warped, where they could cause a problem. Because you can't just hold it in your hand and look at it. It's very difficult to tell unless it's severe. Now, here is a fairly easy troubleshooting thing, but you'd be surprised how many people have had to have been stumped by this. So they're going to wind a bobbin, and all of a sudden they notice that, okay, they disengaged the clutch knob on the left, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and they go to push, and it's, maybe the machine is acting. I'm playing with the pedal to demonstrate a point here. Maybe it's just not working, right? It's not engaging. What could it be? Well, it could be that the spring that activates, that holds the bobbin tire to the hand wheel, which of course I can disengage by pulling up on this lever. It could be that the spring is weak. It could be that there's an adjustment knob here on the bobbin winder and maybe it's loosened. Remember, this area gets a lot of vibration. So you may want to check to make sure. And these bobbin winders have an adjustment range, but you want to make sure, obviously, that the bobbin winder, when it's lifted up and disengaged, that tire is not dragging on your hand wheel. If sometimes your machine is kind of running sluggishly, there are many potential causes for this, but this can happen. In fact, you can forget. I've had people, I've had to go and help them, and they actually forgot that they had the bobbin winder on. They've taken the bobbin off. Maybe they were new to it and they pressed it down, thought they were good, and the machine is having to sew fabric, and it has the friction of the bobbin tire at the same time. And some of these machines are so strong you might not even notice it, but you obviously don't want the machine having to do both of those things at once. It's not meant to, and it's not a good idea. So we've got it disengaged. Our spring is working great. It's holding the bobbin tire off of the hand wheel when we're not winding a bobbin. This set screw for the adjustment of the device itself is fine. Now, I want to talk to you about something that happened with one of my customers, and it's a great illustration of what can happen when you've got a machine, it's new to you, you're not used to using it, and you're not sure what's going on, and the good news is it's a very simple fix. Now, if I can manage to get this turned around for you all without pulling my cord out here. Now, this, let's come out a little bit. There we go. Okay, so this is, of course, the hand wheel side, the right side of the sewing machine you've been seeing. And let's turn this a little, there we go. Now, for all vintage sewing machines, virtually every machine, from the very earliest days of sewing machine up until around the early 70s, where they started using different mechanisms to turn bobbin winding on and off. Okay, essentially, when you go to wind a bobbin, you have to disengage the drive shaft of the machine that's pushing the needle, and you want to disengage that and harness the power of the motor to get your bobbin winder to move. But you don't want your needle flopping up and down. That creates all sorts of unnecessary issues. And the machine is designed not to run the needle while you're winding the bobbin. So I'll show you this. This is the hand wheel. This is the clutch knob. The term clutch is used, of course, because it engages the gears of the machine and disengages the gears, like an old manual stick shift in a car. Now, this is a little set screw that's used for the hand wheel clutch. But I don't have to keep adjusting it every time I use it. It is adjusted in such a way that when I turn it to the right, righty tight, it's snug. You don't wrench or torque this down. It's not like the lug nut on a car wheel, but you just want it nice and snug. When I want to disengage, like when I was running that bobbin, I move it to the left slightly, and you can kind of feel it move. And then if you turn the hand wheel, I'm turning it now, and the needle's not moving. That means you should be set up for bobbin winding. And now you can see, you should be able to see the motor spinning and the hand wheels spinning, but the clutch knob is not, right? If I tighten the clutch knob, now it spins with the hand wheel. So you can get a kind of an idea of how that runs. Okay, so I've loosened the clutch knob, okay? This clutch knob, actually, if you keep turning it and loosening it, it will come all the way off. Now, many times if the clutch knob is being fussy, if you have an old machine and it hasn't been overhauled or restored, there could be old sewing machine oil. There could be old oil on the set screw making it stiff. And I'm going to do a different video on how to unfreeze an old sewing machine that you've just gotten. But for the purpose of this video, what I'm wanting to show you all is that people will often loosen this screw, and sometimes you have to get the whole knob off if it's being, ornery or fussy. So watch this, guys. I take the clutch knob off. It's just like a big bolt, really. Okay. Now, what came off in my hand, along with the clutch knob, is a very large metal washer. All of these machines have a washer of some sort. Some are larger, some are smaller, but you get the idea. Now, these washers almost never break. The problem isn't that they break, but I'll give you an example. I had a customer, she had bought a machine from me. It was a straight stitcher. It was probably built somewhere in the 50s. Great machine, heavy duty. I had done the full restoration. So she got it home and she was sewing away and she was just really enjoying the machine. And about a week later, she she finally ran out of thread in her bobbin. So she went to wind the bobbin and use the bobbin winder, which was also restored and functioning fine, had a new tire and everything. Well, she went to loosen the clutch knob, but again, her newer machines don't use the old knob system, so she wasn't used to it. She's a very experienced sewer, knew her way around sewing, but this was, again, it's like getting a different car in your hands. You have to kind of get used to it. So she took the knob off, and then she saw the washer, so she went to put the washer back on. And when she did, she took the knob and she went to screw it on. But what she didn't realize was that that washer had wiggled loose. And the washer sits, or you seat the washer, if I may use that term. And you can see it has two I don't know what you call these, but they sit. The washer has two little key or gears, and when you turn it, they sit or seat into recesses, one for each of those little teeth on the drive shaft. And so if this is you guys, when you're doing this and you take this apart, it's not hard to do. Just be aware that when you are screwing, and I'm gonna bring this over so you guys. Okay guys, I wanted you to see it from a side angle. So here's the hand wheel, the washer is seated, okay? And I'm gonna take the knob and I'm going to screw it back on. But do so and keep the knob as flat as possible, because notice that if I, and there goes the washer, she goes flying. You see how easily it will pop off. Again, no harm, no foul. This is a really beefy washer. It's not harmed. But now watch this. Here it is seated, and you can see how easily it can become unseated, but it can still hang on the drive shaft. Right now, it's almost too loose, okay? It's almost about to come off. Now, let's say you get here and it wants to be like a playful pet here, and it wants to keep jumping around. You can take a little sewing oil. You can put one drop on the back side, maybe a drop, 2 drops on the washer. Sometimes that will help kind of just hold it still. You want it to be still, right? Now, I'm going to take the knob and I'm going to very slowly and carefully secure it, and now the washer should be seated fine. I need this set screw here to go back and not be all the way out. In fact, you really should not have to fully loosen this set screw. If you have a machine that's been overhauled, everything's good, you just want that screw loose enough so that you can tighten and loosen your clutch as you need to, right? So I'm going to turn this and set the screw. So that is an example of something that can really, really mess with your sewing machine if you're not careful. And again, my customer, she was so relieved when again, she called me and I walked her through it and I said, okay, let's retrace your steps. Have you changed a needle recently? Have you rethreaded the machine recently? Have you wound a bobbin? And when she said yes, that was a clue for me to kind of help her go through a troubleshooting process. And again, she got the washer back on the way it was meant to be, and the machine started sewing away just beautifully. It was just waiting for that adjustment, okay? Remember, the machines rely on human brain power, and again, she's a really smart sewer. She just wasn't used to doing this. She's used to a modern machine with a computer that basically does a lot of the thinking for you, but it doesn't do the sewing. You still have to be You're still using your mind to sew. Okay, while we're here, let's talk about belts. Now, with sewing machine belts, you can use the traditional black rubber belts, or you can use what's called a cogged belt. Now let's sort of zoom in so you can see. You can see these little, they look like teeth, but they're basically, it's like a, well they are, they're kind of, this is a sort of a rubbery silicone product that's used to make the belt, and I believe there are some fibers in there that reinforce it. But anyway, these cogged belts are very popular. They are known to supposedly give you more friction. I think either of the belts is fine, but a lot of the 60s belts, a lot of the restorations I do, I will use these. Now, let's pan back out just a bit, and I want to show you something here. I have found that generally speaking, the tensioning on a belt is normally, once you get it set, it's normally not an issue. Now, let's take a look. You will see this is the bracket that the motor is mounted to, and of course the bracket has a big bolt, and that bolt secures the bracket to the body of the machine, and the bracket has an adjustable area. So depending on the belt that you have, you can adjust it. And if I were going to change this belt, I would loosen the bolt. I would move the bracket up, which would give me slack. The motor would come up, the pulley would be closer to the hand wheel, and that would give me the slack to remove the belt. Let's say it was dry rotted. It hadn't broken, it was just, you know. And then you're going to want that maneuverability when you go to put the new belt on. So let's say you have your motor belt on. You've got a brand new belt, you've got the right size belt, and you've got the motor belt on. And now you're going to tighten this bolt, you're going to adjust the bracket, and you're adjusting belt tension. This issue, as in terms of troubleshooting, does not apply to Singer 201s, Singer 1591s that have the potted motor direct drive gear, right? Remember, those sewing machine motors don't have belts. They have gears that are connected from the motor to the actual drive shaft of their machines. Same thing is true with Singer slant shank machines. But outside of those, most machines, including many other Singer models, will have a rear-mounted motor like this one. So I have found over the years that once I've gotten the belt installed and I'm testing the tension, I'm going to take my finger, let's do it from the bottom so you can see a little more easily. I'm going to take my finger, I'm going to push in. I want to be able to push in and have the belt move maybe, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch or so. Now this is an estimate. This is you kind of go by feel, right? So I take my finger, I push in. If I can get the belt to move away from my finger about 1/4 of an inch, not much more than that. And of course, I'm going to start running it. If I start running the machine and the belt is slipping, then I know I need to put a little more tension. But go gradual, because if you put too much tension on the belt, it will damage the bearings in your motor. Motors don't like belts that are too tight, and obviously if it's too loose, it'll start slipping and you won't have... Sometimes it'll slip when you're trying to sew anything, and sometimes it'll only slip when you're sewing something really heavy and dense. But for the most part, once you get the tension set and the machine is sewing, typically, as long as you've secured this bolt well, you're really okay. I normally don't have to go back and play with the motor belt tension very often. Now, let's see. That about covers it as far as these particular issues go. One last thing I'd like to show you has to do with troubleshooting. It's simple in a way, but it can almost look like the machine is not running or it's broken, but it's a very simple one, and I will highlight that. I'm going to have to move the camera so you can see. Okay guys, you are looking sort of an aerial view here down into what you will sometimes see. This particular machine is in a carrying case, but you may also see this in a table. These are the dual outlet plug cords that were used for many years by many manufacturers, and I'm unplugging the machine here to demonstrate for you a very common thing that this will mimic issues with the machine when it really doesn't have them. And I'm going to, if I can get these cords out of the way, I want to show this to you because it really makes a big difference. So if you look in here, and if I graze the light, you'll be able to see this. This is a black plastic dual outlet cord. You can get these new. This one's in beautiful shape, but you can buy a replacement for these. But notice on the left, it is embossed. Well, it's actually embossed on both outlets. One outlet says motor, and on the left, in this case, and it says light on the right. But regardless of which side, when you plug in your machine and you have actually excuse me, you have a plug connected to this cord that's going to plug into your power source, into the wall, for example, and then you have two other plugs that go into these outlets. One is for your light and one is for your motor. You do not want to reverse them. So if this machine is unplugged here, you unplug it from the wall when you're not using it, as you should, but here, sometimes these stay plugged in. You may not even be aware of this. But if, let's say you ever unplug it for whatever reason, that's fine. But when you go to plug it back in, you want to be sure that the plug that comes from the light is plugged into, in this case, I have this one here in my left hand is for the motor. And I'm going to plug it back into the motor. And the other plug is obviously for the light, and it needs to be plugged into the light. You need both of them plugged in, even if your light bulb's burned out. Now, if you ever reverse these, or maybe you're not even aware that it matters, you would think it would not, but it does. If you reverse these, your machine will behave in a strange way. It may start running even when you're not pressing the foot pedal. It may behave very strangely because it's not wired to work that way. So always remember, make sure that the cord that goes to the motor is plugged into the outlet that says motor. And you may need to put a light on it like I have, because they didn't put, they didn't paint the lettering on this thing. They embossed it. And then on this side, of course, on the right, and this one is the light. But even if these two, motor and light, are reversed, just be sure that the plug that goes to your motor is plugged into the outlet that says motor. The one that says light should have the plug that goes to your light source in the machine into that side. And then your machine, like I say, as long as you have them in the right place, you should not have the issues that can appear otherwise. So again, this is another example of something where people think the machine is broken, but in fact, they have simply plugged her in wrong. So there you go. That is an example, and I've sort of illustrated for you guys just some of the things. There are others we can talk about, but I wanted to kind of touch base with you on some of the most common things that I have seen when it comes to sewing machines. And again, none of these things are really issues where something has been damaged or broken. There are other things that can happen to your sewing machine, but essentially these are things that involve settings. One other thing to mention to you with things like tension dials. I have actually found machines where the tension dial was not working, and I'll talk more about that, and I'm going to do a video on, hey, you just got a new vintage sewing machine and it won't work, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons for that, but that's different. These videos on troubleshooting are really for those of you who have machines in good shape. They're running and all of a sudden it stops, and that's really what this video and the one before it we're concentrating on. So the next videos that I put out, one of those is going to involve showing you some of the things I have found when I got a machine. I got it home and I was so excited and thought, uh-oh, what's wrong? And then I'm trying to diagnose some of the issues that the machine has. And again, as I've mentioned many times, very often the machine is not broken. Occasionally you get a part broken here or there, but it's almost always because the machine was neglected for service and maintenance, or someone took it apart and didn't put it back together properly. But that's also fixable, so never give up when you get a machine that won't function right away. And we'll talk more about that in future videos. So anyway, if this troubleshooting series was helpful for those of you, let me know. If those of you think of other things that can be sort of easy and obvious to look at when your machine's not running, please share them down in the comment section. And Anyway, feel free to subscribe, and if you click the little bell symbol there, it'll give you a notification when the next video I have is posted up on the channel. Thank you, folks.